Very often, as you walk down on the London streets, you see side by side on a newspaper poster the news of a great battle in Russia or the Far East, and the news of a football match or a boxing contest. And maybe on a wall nearby you will see side by side a government advertisement urging young women to join the Auxiliary Territorial Service. Another advertisement, generally rather grimy and tattered looking, urging the public to buy beer or whiskey. And perhaps that makes you stop and ask yourself, how can a people fighting for its life find time for football matches? Isn't there something contradictory in urging people to give up their lives to their country's service and at the same time urging them to spend their money on luxuries? But this raising the question of recreation in wartime, which is not quite so simple as it looks. A people at war, and that seems, as a rule, a people that is working harder and under more trying conditions than usually, cannot get on without rest and amusement. Probably these things are more necessary in wartime than at ordinary times. And yet, when you are fighting, you cannot afford to waste precious material on luxury goods, because this is primarily a war of machines, and every scrap of material used up in making gramophones or every pound of silk used in making stockings means less metal for guns and airplanes, or less silks for parachute and barrage balloons. Granted that everyone is sufficiently fed and rested, the main problem war is to divert expenditure from consumption goods to armaments. The working population, including the armed force, when they are on leave or off duty, still need their amusement, but as far as possible they must make do with amusement that do not use up much material or labor time. Also, since England is an island and shipping is very precious, they must make do as far as possible with amusement that do not waste important material. Beyond a certain point, you cannot lower the spending capacity of a population. As a result of the taxation, very large incomes have almost ceased to exist, and wages have not kept up with prices, but the spending power of the mass of the people has perhaps actually increased, because there is no longer any unemployment. Boys and girls of 18 are now earning the wages of adults, and when they have paid for their board and lodging, they still have something over every week. The question is, how are they to spend it without diverting much needed labor to the manufacture of luxury goods? In answer to this question, one can see how the war is altering the habits and even the tastes of British people. But just because the habit of reading has vastly increased and people cannot read without educating themselves in the process, the average intellectual level of the books published has markedly risen. One phenomenon of the war has been the enormous sale of Penguin books, Pelican books, and other cheap editions, most of which would have been regarded by the general public as impossibly highbrow a few years back, and this in turn reacts of the newspaper, making them more serious and less sensational than they were before. It properly reacts also on the radio, and we react in time on the cinema. Before the war, there was every incentive for the general public to be wasteful, at least so far as their means allowed. Everyone was trying to sell something to everyone else. And the successful man, it was imagined, was the man who sold the most goods and got the most money in return. We had learned now, however, that money is valueless in itself, and only goods count. In learning it, we have had to simplify our life and fall back more and more on the resources of our own minds instead of on synthetic pleasure manufactured for us in Hollywood or by the makers of silk stocking, alcohol and chocolate. And under the pressure of that necessity, we are rediscovering the simple pleasure: reading, walking, gardening, swimming, dancing, singing, which we had half forgotten in wasteful years before the war.